This webinar is presented by the Academy of Model Aeronautics and their flagship publication, Model Aviation. First, Greg Prater from the AMA Plans Service will discuss how to select the best plans for your next project. Afterward, Greg Hahn, AMA's Competition Director, will highlight building techniques and tricks of the trade. We will also share a video and have a poll or two. During the webinar, please use the chat in the lower left corner of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can. Those we are unable to get to, we will answer online when we upload the video to www.modelaviation.com/October 2013 webinar. First, let me introduce Greg Prater. Greg Prater is a model aviation contest director, hosting several contests each year. Greg's 25 years of experience in the photo reproduction industry, coupled with his passion for building and flying, make him an excellent person to head the AMA Plan Service Department, helping hobbyists with their project. Here's a behind-the-scenes video of Greg and the AMA Plan Service.
Nearly 19,000 plans are archived and distributed through AMA Plan Services. The plans housed here were donated or purchased through the National Model Aviation Museum. Many of the older plans are still saved as Mylar, such as these early Model Aviation magazine plans. There are also 16,000 plans in the Ponds collection, carefully stored and labeled in rows of shelving in a fireproof area. Most of these plans have already been digitally scanned and stored in online servers. Here, Greg prepares Bob Aberley's Scratch 1 plans for printing. After opening the plans, Greg inspects it to make sure it's usable. If necessary, Greg will address any concerns or issues with the builder.
Yeah, this would prevent that work. You know what the wingspan is. So the plan is going to tell you, how to build things, what part goes where.
When the plans are ready, they are sent to the printer. After one final inspection, Greg includes any supplemental materials, such as this build article from Model Aviation. The plans are then rolled and packaged for shipping.
Great video, Greg. Tell me, what else does the AMA Plan Service offer?
Thanks, Jay. We can do reductions and enlargements of plans. We can also do reverse plans. As if you only have the right wing half on your plans, you can reverse it, put the left wing on there also. Also do plans repair, or we can do reconstruction of a set of plans. Plans are in an archive, so we have a lot of experience. We also have access to the Model Aviation Museum library, which has thousands and thousands of old magazines we can pull the articles from and reprint them with the plans.
One of the questions that I see here online is, how do I find the CG if it is not listed on the plan?
CG is usually circled. It's like a round circle that's in quarters. That represents a range of CG to the lead edge and to the trail edge of that circle. If you're in that circle, you're good to go.
Thanks, Greg. Let's get down to your presentation on how to select a good set of plans.
Okay. With any set of plans, you first want to do a cross-reference of the dimensions on the plan. This is the Scratch 1 from Bob Aberley. Notice the dimensions match and are accurate. Wing chord at the fuse matches the wing chord of the wing drawing up there at the top of the wing. Check that with the ruler. If they both match, you're good to go. Compare the left and right wings. They should be the same width. You can also check the distance of the ribs throughout the length of the wing. Those should be fairly consistent. One cautionary note, Note, if there's only the right wing on the plan, don't build two right wings. Your plane won't fly very well at all. Second, before building from a set of plans, be sure to examine the line width. If it has a wide line width, choose either the center or the edge, one of the other edges of the line. Make sure you be consistent throughout the plan. If the plan has been reproduced several times, or it's been blown up and enlarged, the line is going to be fairly large. Good.
Real quick, it's asking here, you mentioned enlarge. It says when the plans are enlarged, do you cut on the outside of the lines?
That would be a good idea. You can do it on the outside or the inside or in the middle. Just be consistent throughout the way you select your line. Okay, a good quality print will have even, clean lines. Sloppy lines or inconsistent line thickness, a bad print job or a bad print design. Place a straight edge along the spar. Spars are generally always straight. Usually either the lead edge or the trail edge will be straight also, so use that as a reference. You can also, on this plan, see that there's a line, reference line through the center of the fuselage. Put a straight edge along that, make sure it's nice and straight. After your plans pass the first two tests, the dimensions are consistent and the line width is even. Third is make sure your plans read like a book. The designer did what he did. Read the article all the way through. Make sure you understand what his design tried to accomplish. Often the more details, the better. The Grumman Goose plan is one of our more popular plans. In addition to good dimensions and fine lines, it also reads like a book. The plan service offers a second set of plans for half price, so you can use the second set of plans to actually cut out the plan outlines to use to make your cuts with. As you can see, when you tackle each section of the build, you're given clear instructions. In this close-up, you're given step-by-step wing assembly instructions and tail group instructions. Throughout these plans are helpful hints and tips so that you can have clear directions. Finally, you want plans that have stood the test of time or have been published in a magazine. Jay, you want to talk about how a plan is selected for publishing in Model Aviation?
Sure. Obviously, we get a lot of plans submitted to Model Aviation magazine to be published, and it's very important to us that there's a good article to go along with it to walk you through the build process. It's also very important that their plans are of high quality and are easily to be built from. So as one example being the Grumman Goose, we also are looking, which we did with the Grumman Goose, we're looking to have short kits, working with companies within the industry to provide short kits to allow you, if you want to build one of our plans, to then be able to get a short kit, which will hopefully save you some time and effort and further promote building. And real quickly, while we're talking about promoting building, as you may have seen in our October issue, right now we're offering 20% off all of the plans at the AMA Plan Service through October 31st. Back to you, Greg.
Thanks, Jay. That's 20% off sales, keeping me very busy. Back to the Model Aviation plans. Each plan is shipped with the original article from the magazine. Plans that have been published in a magazine have been, the plane itself has been built. That's why you see the picture on each plan that was, each article that was published, so you know that a physical copy of the plane has been actually built. This assures that you have a final aircraft that will fly. Okay, now let's look at some bad plans that we see those occasionally. Here's a rare example of a plan from the Pond collection that we had to remove because it was so out of whack. As you can see, look at the wing rib there in the middle of the fuselage. it was stretched an inch and a half. And we tried to fix it, but it turned out throughout the rest of the length of the plan that there was more inconsistencies as we went along. This is an example of a bad plan you hope you never run into. This plan does not have a lot of, it does have a lot of detail and reads like a book, but this plan does not have consistent dimensions. You can see that blur there above the 13-inch mark on the ruler. The line weight is uneven. There's not a straight line on the plan. And these plans were from a kit that was produced a long time ago. So they've been reproduced many times, and a lot of the reproductions were not done well. During the scanning process, you see the plan stretched, creating a skewed image. This offsets all the dimension, ruining these plans. We tried to repair it, but dimensions were off in other areas also. We have 18,000 plans at the AMA. I encourage anyone interested in building from our plans to talk to me directly before buying a plan. Not all plans are created equally. Some are much harder to build. For example, a 3-view is hard to build from than a build plan or a plan from a magazine. This 3-view plan does not read like a book, does not have all the details, nor was it ever intended to be built as a model. But you can still use it. You need a 3-view if the plane was never modeled, or you need to make a plane with exact scale outlines or scale competition. This plan does read like a book. It also passes the test we listed earlier. It does have consistent dimensions. It does have even, nice lines. It does read like a book. It was tested and even published by Bob Aberley. This is called the Scratch 1. It was based on a series of articles in Model Aviation for learning to scratch build. These are available at modelaviation.com in the archive section. Secondly, you want to try to build from a plans that offers a laser kit if you can find one. Garmin Goose has a laser kit. It has almost 100 very small intricate parts that you would not have to build yourself. And it's available as a short kit versus a long kit, which has all of the long stringers involved. So you can use a short kit or a long kit. A long kit would be more expensive. Try to find a plane with fiberglass parts that are available. There's fiberglass specialties that are still in business. They have fiberglass parts for a lot of old plans. A laser kit removes the burden of trying to buy the right weight and grade of wood. It also carefully and accurately cuts each piece to the exact size you need. If you're new to building, this may cost a little more, but saves you hours of work and frustrations. But not all planes have short kits available. Here's a view of the Mr. Mulligan built with laser cut parts. It's a beautiful plane. I hate to cover that. Newer builders will want plans that are published or have instructions like plans published in Model Aviation. These instructions will walk you through step-by-step of every phase of the project. It may have contact email of the original designer. Feel free to contact him. It also helps to join a club or partner with a more seasoned builder for additional techniques. Whichever route you decide to take, the end result will be a plane you will be proud of.
Thanks, Greg. Before we move on and get Greg Hahn to talk to us a little bit further, we're going to go ahead and do a poll on why are you interested in plans building. So we'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and complete the poll. We'll give you about 15 more seconds to complete the poll. Okay, in case you're interested, I like working with my hands was the top selected choice of the poll. Okay, next up we have Greg Hahn. He will discuss building techniques. Whether it's full scale or models, Greg Hahn has always enjoyed aviation and has won many awards in flight and static competition, including Top Gun. Greg has been featured in numerous publications and television shows in the U.S. and internationally, and currently Greg is the AMA Competitions Director. Greg, before you get into your presentation, one of the questions I saw here online was how to determine the CG if it's not marked on the plan.
I saw that question, and I was going to say if I had time at the end, I'd address that. It can be a little lengthy because it mainly depends on the wing plan form where you find the CG. Normal CG of your average aircraft is going to be between 25 and 27% of wing chord. So you would normally at the root where the wing hits the fuselage, you're going to measure the root chord at where it hits the fuselage. You're going to percentage that back 25 to 27%, and that normally gives you your CG on a rectangular wing. And when you get swept wings and you have swept leading edge, swept trailing edge, then you go to 25 to 27% of mean aerodynamic chord, and you have a mathematic equation to figure that. So that's something you almost have to do visually, but normally 25, 27%. On a warbird, I like to be closer to 25% because I want the nose pointed down when you pull the power back. So some of your other aerobatic planes fly a little better with a back CG. It gets them, more aerobatic and gets a little easier on the flight characteristics. But now that we're ready to get into our build, let's get started on the idea of we're actually going to start cutting parts and smearing some glue around. The first thing you want to start out with is there are four main structures to most aircraft, or to any aircraft. The first part being the wing, the first part being the fuselage, second part being the wing. You got the horizontal stab and the vertical stab. Those are the main four parts of any aircraft. When you start a build, normally I recommend starting with the largest structure, which is usually the wing, and work to the smallest. Main reason for that being that as you create scrap by cutting your parts and cutting your sticks, you're going to end up being able to use that scrap as the smaller parts you start building the smaller parts, and you're going to be a little more efficient with your material. Most plans will have you build straight on the plan. I normally cover the plan with wax paper or some type of Mylar or whatever it takes to keep the glue from sticking to the paper. And here's a picture of what I'm talking about, where you're actually building on the plan. It also helps cut your parts the right length without having to do a lot of measuring, and it speeds up the building process all the way around. Next, you have all the parts necessary for the structure you're building ready when you get ready to start. If you've got formed parts or you have cut parts and your sticks, you kind of get an idea of how many sticks you're going to need to build the wing or whatever you're building. Try to have all the parts handy. That way you don't have to break concentration, go cut a part, and come back. It's going to make it flow a lot easier for you. And lastly, follow any tips or guide on the plan. Most are there to keep you out of trouble and moving forward. And as you can see on this section of a plan that I've got out here, you see, if you follow my pointer up here, you've got wing assembly order, and the plans, the guy that drew the plans is giving you the sequence of events of exactly how to build the part. And it keeps you in flow and probably answers a lot of your questions. So always pay attention to anything that's actually marked on the plan itself, because they're always there to help you. Next part, we get to the lumber and materials, which it's whether you're building a house, a model airplane, or what you're doing, you've always got lumber and materials. Sometimes the plans have call-outs, sometimes they don't. But there are three basic woods that we use for model building. First being balsa wood is very lightweight, comes in several grades depending upon the weight. Sands easily absorbs glue readily. It's the strongest wood by weight in the world and will make up the majority of your project. I saw a question earlier where they were talking about what grades of balsa should I decide to use on my airplane. It depends actually on the size of the airplane, the amount of stress in the area that the balsa wood is being used, because balsa wood, its lightest and less strength balsa is called contest grade, which is very light, and then you get down to, I've seen balsa where you could almost make a baseball bat out of it. So you mainly look at the area and decide on what strength or weight of wood is going to work in that area. You don't want a bunch of heavy balsa in the tail end of the airplane, and so you want to keep that light. So just it's kind of a thought process of what balsa to use. The second wood that's normally used is plywood, which is a multi-layer cross-grain layup of usually birch or poplar plywoods. It's used for high-stress areas, mainly landing gear mounts, engine firewalls, and other small places that need a secure wood screw. And it comes in various sizes, all the way from 1/64 up to usually 3/8 is the maximum that we use for modeling. And then there's solid hardwood, which will normally be maple or spruce and is used where you have high stress area, but the part is too big to use normal plywood because of its limited thickness. And you'll find these sometimes in fixed gear airplanes and things like that. That's where you'll find a lot of hardwoods in that area. Be sure to study the plan for the call-outs as to what type of wood or size is needed for the part. And here on a piece of plan, you can see on my pointer area up here in this area here, it's telling you what size. And then on this area here, it says spruce main spar, so it's calling out a spruce, which is a piece of hardwood, and then a hardwood dowel leading edge. So it's going to tell you, a lot of plans are going to tell you what kind of wood you're going to need. And so always look on the plan if you're in question, and if the plan doesn't help you, then think about what you're actually going to be doing with that part. Okay, there's two main parts that you see on an aircraft plan. You have cut parts and dimensional parts. Cut parts are the ones that will normally have a template, or the outline for them will be somewhere on the plan, so be sure to use it. Dimensional parts will be the sticks that can either be purchased in the sizes needed or cut with a stripper to the sizes needed. I'm going to back up to the picture that I just had, and down here in the corner off my pointer, you're going to see a template for a cut part, which is a fuselage former. And so you're going to find these in different places on the plan, so you're going to want to mark them and make sure you don't miss them, because they're going to be very heavily needed when you're building the airplane. But these are what we call cut parts. Okay. In plans building, there's a lot of tools that go into this. A lot of them are specialty tools. Most of them are readily available either at a hardware store or at a hobby store. Some of them you're going to have to go to a hobby store for. And the first thing you got to start off with in building from plans is going to be a very good workbench. And this is a picture of a workbench here that's not readily accessible to use pins with, but it's flat. And the main thing is to keep the thing flat. You don't want to build any warps into your structures, and if you start out from the beginning with a flat surface, it's going to help you immensely all the way through. Normally you're going to cover this with a piece of homosoap board, which is essentially a ceiling, acoustical ceiling tile turned upside down. You can stick pins in it, and it'll take the shape of the board that it sits on, and it works pretty well that way. The next thing you're going to need is sandpaper of a lot of different grades, and also square and round blocks, which you can use as shapers with your sandpaper. And a lot of people, sandpaper takes a lot of work. You got to be careful, because you can get sandpaper that's too heavy for the work you're doing, and so you've got to get used to using and deciding on what grades of sandpaper. And then there's also some sanding sticks that are available at hobby stores, which these are what you're seeing here, different round dowels with grit sandpaper on them that you can use to shape your parts with. The next set of tools are your knives, shapers, and carvers for making the parts, the sticks, and trimming. And the first one I'm going to show you here is your standard X-Acto blade. Everybody probably knows what that is, but they call that with a number 11 blade. And this is the one you're going to use to death. It's one of the main modeling tools that was created a long time ago. Next is a hand stripper. This is an item that's available at your hobby store that has an adjustable width band, or about where my thumb is. You can move it in and out, and you can actually take a sheet of like 1/8" balsa and cut 1/8" squares with it, or 1/8" by 1/4, or whatever you want. The next tool is a zona saw, which is going to help you cut the ends, and it's not going to crunch them or change the shape of the ends. You're actually going to get a good square cut so that it can absorb the glues real well. The next one is a hand razor plane you can use to knock the edges off if you need a round edge. A handy little piece that is also available at hobby stores. You've got a spoke shaver. If you can find one of these in an antique store, they're really good for shaping hardwoods, because your razor plane doesn't quite have the strength to do that. Next thing you're going to need is adhesive. You got to glue the thing together. And there's all different types of glues that are coming up. The first type of glue, epoxy. This is an epoxy glue. I'm just showing you bottles. This is a non-aerobic cure epoxy. Most of the time it's used for high stress, high strength areas. And you mix it together and it can set in either 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or 4 hours, whatever type of epoxy you buy. Next you have your CA glues, which are your instant glues. They absorb into the wood well, make a good bond, and then what you've got here is like a thin and a medium, and then the kicker that you spray on to speed up the cure even faster. The next glue is the white glue, and it's an air dry. Takes a long time. Back in the day when I first started, that's all we had. So you'd glue up 5 parts and go away for a couple hours and then come back. Nowadays we have CAs, but white glue also works well in high strength and high stress areas. I also use a lot of clear silicone glue, which is actually a caulk, but it's actually an adhesive, and it stays flexible. So if you need a place that needs to stay flexible, you use the silicone, and it doesn't turn into a hard spot for you. Okay, other miscellaneous tools, you're going to need pins, a different assortment of pins, and you can go raid your wife's or your mother's sewing room and you get everything you need there. And here's a picture of pins being used, and then an aluminum straight edge which doubles as a ruler is a handy item to have so you can cut your parts. And so that pretty much finishes up my end of the first segment of getting started with the tools and the glues and getting rolling.
Thanks, Greg. I've been watching the questions online, and I'm going to hit you with a couple here real quick. One of which question is about ventilation. Do you use any kind of ventilation either when you're sawing wood or with using the adhesives?
Okay, ventilation, it depends on your situation. In my shop, I don't have a dust vac or anything like that. What I normally do in my work area, I keep a fan going all the time, either from the right or the left or whichever, and I keep windows open a lot. Some people are affected by both epoxy and CA, which can get into your eyes as far as the fumes and cause you some irritation. If you keep a fan blowing right next to you while you're working, usually it keeps the fumes or anything away from you.
Excellent. I also saw a question on here about the best way to store CA. I put mine in the refrigerator. Do you have any tips on that?
CA, yeah. The best place to store it is in a refrigerator. If you're going to store it for long periods, like 6 months to a year, if you buy 10 bottles and you're going to put 5 back, you can put them in the freezer. Literally freeze them, and they will. It extends the shelf life by about double when you freeze them. But keep them in the refrigerator, and keep them out of moist environments because it will set up in the bottle on you.
Thank you very much, Greg. You always provide us a lot of great information on building, and fortunately I get to go in your office and see some of the neat things you're working on. Greg has a very nice Corsair hanging in his office. He also has several boats that he's scratch built, so he's definitely an all-around modeler. At this point, we'd like to go ahead and offer up another poll, and the question is, how likely are you to start a new project this winter? And we'll give you about 30 seconds to complete that. Okay, 15 more seconds. Okay, it looks like a handful was the top answer to our poll. Look, Greg, Hahn, it looks like there's a question here about other types of glues, such as ambroid. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, briefly? I noticed that. Those are modeling glues, and they can be used. They're not part of the toolkit that I use because of what else is available. Ambroid is an older cement, and that was used heavily back in the 60s. It was one of the first lacquer-based glues where they actually used cellulose to create an adhesive out of it. Ambroid actually began back in the day when they used to melt photographic negatives and use them for glue because they were made out of the cellulose, which was a lacquer-based material. But no, they work well. Sigman is an air dry glue, very similar to a white glue, just happens to be a different color. They call it alphatic resin. So no, you can. There are many glues. I just don't usually use those in my toolkit.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we're almost out of time here, and so I want to take a moment to thank both Gregs for joining me here, and I also want to thank you for tuning in and listening to us and offering up questions. Obviously, we're promoting the October issue of Model Aviation magazine. The entire issue is focused on building. To that end, the AMA Plan Service is offering 20% off all plans through October 31st. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have further webinars in the future. Thank you. Bye.